Is 16,000 hertz polling rate worth it, or is it all just a marketing ploy to get us to spend our hard-earned money? Let's go ahead and find out. Psh.
I got you.
Duck.
100 chamber.
My ult's not ready.
Oh my god, what a miracle.
No charges left.
Spike down A. One enemy remaining.
Hell, I think.
No, not hell.
Here.
See, long.
Nice. In my way. Speak faster. 3.
One enemy remaining. A.
Alright, so here we have the A68 Turbo in all of its beauty. The RGB is going, the light bar is beautiful, and right next to my Leviathan V4 Pro, it is looking amazing. Or ROM Leviathan V4. Sorry about that. It looks amazing with the blue colorway. But before we get into the actual keyboard and the experience, I would like to go over briefly the unboxing experience. I'm going to pull that up in just a second. Alright. Here it is. Here's going to be the silver box. You can pull this off right here. Open it up and go. Wah! We have the plastic keyboard cover, stickers, manual, as well as this box right here, which will contain your 8K wire or 16K wire technically, as well as your keycap puller. Now that's gonna be the basically it for the unboxing experience. It is very basic, but you don't really need anything else except for that. I mean, some keyboards will obviously have like a carrying case and stuff like that, but in this case it does not have one. It would have been nice though, to have a carrying case, but not in this scenario. And now let's go over the keyboard. Now when you first pull this keyboard out, it feels slightly hefty, not too heavy, and that kind of just makes it feel not as premium as, like, let's say for instance the Slice 75 HE, which feels very heavy or hefty as well as metal-like. In this case, you can very much tell that it is aluminum, but not as heavy, and feels less metal-like. It's more on the aluminum side, as opposed to, let's say, the Slice 75, which is just absolutely heavy as heck. You know, it's heavy. Next, we're going to go over, you can go over and see over here, you're going to be able to see the volume knob, which I've barely used, but can be useful for some people. It is a very nice touch, but personally, I have not used it very much. And then we can also see the multiple rapid trigger setting button, which for most people will most likely use it for toggling between gaming and productivity. But in my case, I don't think it like really matters, because at the end of the day, you got this big keyboard that is RGB-esque, has a giant light bar, and I just think it's counterintuitive because it's also quite loud, which is what I'm going to get into a little bit later. Alright, so for the overall aesthetic, it kind of reminds me of an F1 car or a race car. It is very much RGB heaven. It has the light bar, it has blue accents all over it, and because of the blue accents that I've seen on this keyboard, it actually makes it very difficult for you to customize this keyboard by itself, because the blue accents, it's not all just white, it's not all just white or gray, it's straight up there's blue accents all over the keyboard. It's not like you can put like a black and white keycaps and make it look awesome, but at the end of the day, it's cool the way it comes, and sometimes people love that. So it's very gamer-esque, and honestly, by itself, a very cool piece to have. Now that aesthetics are aside, how much is it? It is $139.99. And I personally got it for $99 when I got this pre-purchased about a couple months ago. But it is $139.99 for the mount tie switches. That is the only switches that allow for 16,000 hertz polling rate. Unless the Gateron Pro Jade switches also allow for 16,000. That's the only one I know for sure comes out of the box with 16,000 hertz polling rate. So between the three that are being sold originally with the keyboard, it's the mount tie, the Polaris, and Gateron Pro Jade switches. I believe the mount tie is the only one that comes with 16,000 hertz polling rate, but correct me if I'm wrong. Now let's quickly go over the experience with the mount tie switches. They do come with 16,000 hertz polling rate right out of the box here, and I'm gonna go over my experience with that in just a second. But first, let's talk about the feel. Now the feel of these switches is quite nice. I love kind of like how it feels, how it sounds. But that's personal preference. To a lot of people, it's gonna sound very clacky and loud due to it being in an aluminum case. It's very easy to actuate, but it has some harsh bottoming out, and that kind of attributes to the loud clackiness of the keyboard. Is it noticeable? Yes. But is it to the point where I'm like, oh my god, I can't have this on my desk, this is a deal breaker? No. If you were in a productive area, like at an office, yes, it's going to be very, very, very disruptive. But I personally don't see anyone bringing this RGB heavy keyboard to their office to do some productivity, as I mentioned earlier. So overall, if it gets a yes from me just because I like the feeling of the keyboard. It's just that the only drawback might be the sound, which is mostly personal preference. Now that we've gone over the overall experience with the switches, let's all go ahead and head on to the software, which I'm going to pull up right about now. Okay, so we went ahead and pulled up the MCHOS Hub online software, which will be the online software for the A68 Turbo. So what you're going to be able to do is click on enter right here. It should be able to pull up your keyboard right away, and I'm going to go ahead and click in. Let it load for a little bit. And there we are. So we have the MCHOS Hub right here, which recognizes our keyboard as the A68 device. First and foremost, we're going to be able to see the lighting here, which I have set to Aurora mapping. If you guys like the way that this current RGB looks, it's going to be the Aurora mapping. We're capable of changing the lighting on backlight as well as the light box individually, which is really cool. So for me personally, I have my RGB off just for a lot of people say performance. You know, having RGB on can kind of give a slight change in latency, so I personally keep it off. But for this review, I went ahead and turned it on for you guys. You're going to be able to change the speed and brightness of your keyboard, as well as change the color palette for some of the lighting effects, but that's going to be it for the most part on the lighting. Let's go ahead and pull up the most important part, which is the rapid trigger. We can go ahead and select our switch here amongst the couple of options. Taishan, or also known as the mount tie switches, as well as the Polaris. And I don't really know much about the pink one, but that's also there. I have my settings set to 0.1, and that's going to be the max that you can go. Then we're going to go over here. We can go ahead and enable a rapid trigger. And while it says 0.150 because I enabled Berserk mode 2.0, which allows for the rapid trigger press precision to be in the 0.001 millimeters. Now, I know it's a little bit overkill, especially if I'm setting it to just 0.15, but for you guys, you might want to do this in case you guys wanted to be even more sensitive. Then we're gonna have key mappings over here, basic, extended, special. You're gonna be able to kind of macro whatever you need on this keyboard for keys that you might not have on here. Then we're going to have the Rappy Snappy, SOCD, DKS, Mod Tap, as well as toggle switch. And I personally don't use any of these, and I know that sounds crazy. I just personally don't want to get banned on any games that allow these that don't allow these advanced key settings. And last but not least, we're gonna go over the final important kind of like slide, which is going to be where you're going to set your polling rate to 16,000. Now, like I said before, if you don't have the mount tie switches, you won't be able to set it to 16,000. But if you do, you should be able to set it to 16,000 right here. It will naturally or by default come in at 8,000, I believe. And I changed it to 16,000 as soon as I went into the software. On the far left, you're gonna have onboard config as well as custom config. And right here, you're gonna be able to see default onboard, custom config, right, blah, 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 blah. And from here, this is where you're going to be able to create configs for you to switch between using the button on the keyboard. Let's get on to the performance of this keyboard. 16,000 hertz polling rate on the A68 Turbo. Is it worth it? Well, in my opinion, there is a difference between 16,000 hertz and 8,000 hertz. And now that might sound a little bit crazy, you know, a lot of people say that you can barely tell the difference between 1,000 and 8,000 as it is. So what's the point of 16,000? In my opinion, I have tested 8,000 as well as 16,000, and I have definitely noticed a difference between 8,000 and 16,000 hertz in terms of responsiveness. Now, is it a crazy amount? Not necessarily. You can definitely feel how much more responsive it is, but it's not to the crazy amount as if you're like willing to spend, let's say for instance, you wanted to buy something for an 8,000 hertz keyboard for like $100. Is it worth the $40 increase? In my opinion, no. I don't really think so. For most people, it's not going to be that big of difference if you can't tell the difference between 16,000 hertz and 8,000 hertz. But it does come with a possible risk of strain on the CPU. As you guys know, the higher the hertz of a device, the more likely it's going to strain your CPU. So you're going to want to make sure you have a strong CPU to use whatever device has high polling rate. For instance, the Leviathan V4 has 8,000, and in this case, A68 Turbo has 16,000. In some cases, I would also occasionally have accidental actuation, especially while holding a key. So it would be weird because I'd be playing Hightail and I'd be holding A, and then for some reason, like, it would keep moving even when I swap to D. Like, I would keep moving towards A, even though I've swapped to D. Now, it's been on very, very rare occasions, and also it is very sensitive, especially with 16,000 polling rate. So, I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt because it is the first of its kind to do what it does. Now, is there such a thing as being too sensitive? Yes, this is a very sensitive keyboard. It can be very, very responsive, and because of that, my movement in Valorant would just be kind of be so responsive that it doesn't line up with my shots. And I know that sounds crazy and kind of a skill diff, but that is just my personal experience with having this keyboard, as opposed to, let's say I was on 8,000 or I was using the Slice 75, which is on 8,000 polling rate. So the overall consensus for this keyboard, I know earlier that I said for an extra $40 to buy to get 16,000 hertz, it's not really that worth it. I still think that it's still a great option if you want top of the line latency as well as performance numbers and a 68% layout, which is not very common in the keyboard space. A lot of people either like 75% or 60%. In my opinion, I love a 68% keyboard because I love having these kind of like what keys on the side. All in all, it is a great experience. Whatever colorway you go for, if you want 16,000 hertz, definitely get the mount tie. But if you don't, let me just say it's not the craziest difference. You can definitely save yourself a couple bucks by just going with the Polaris. And yeah, I mean, overall, this A68 Turbo gets a astounding pass from me. It is definitely a underrated keyboard as opposed to other keyboards right now. Thank you everyone guys for watching. If you guys enjoyed my review of the A68 Turbo, I would highly recommend subscribing, liking, following my socials, whether it be Tyson Tech or on gears.gg if you want to see all my gear, as well as on YouTube, subscribing and leaving a like and comments. Please, I am trying my absolute best to put out quality reviews for you guys, especially as someone who has been in the space for quite a while. So thank you guys for watching. I appreciate you. Please contribute to making these reviews by leaving your support. Thank you so much everyone, and I hope you guys enjoyed my review of the A68. Bye.